Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can quickly and easily create a domino chain simulation. And we've all done it, especially when we were kids. We got out grandma's dominoes and lined them up on the floor and pushed one and watched them all fall down. Well, this is the same thing but in Blender. As you can see, I'm using Blender version 2.82a, but the same method that I'm using will work in pretty much every version of Blender. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to press 7 to go into top side view, and I'm going to press 5 to go into orthographic view. Now let's create the domino. Add, mesh, and then cube. Now click on idle, and we're going to adjust these right here in order to adjust the size because we want it to be fairly precise. On the x-axis, adjust this to 0.05, and then on the y-axis, adjust this to 0.15. I'll zoom in so we can see it better. So it kind of looks like a domino from the top, but it's way long, so we need to make that shorter. So set this to 0.3, enter. Alright, now that kind of looks like a domino. Alright, now since all these numbers right here do not show the scale of 1, which means the scale has not been applied, and being that this is going to be a physics object, let's go ahead and apply the scale. So press Control A and to bring up this menu and choose scale. Now all these show 1s, so we're good to go. Alright, now we could, Shift D and duplicate these one at a time using Shift D and grab to create a domino line, but you could see that this would take forever and it's not perfectly aligned and all that stuff. It would just take a long time. Or we could do it this way, which is a much better way to go about it. Select, we're going to go ahead and create a path instead. I'm going to go ahead and before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and create a material for this. So just click on material, click new, and we'll deal with the material later, but we'll go ahead and create it now, create the material, or assign it a material because it makes it easier later. Alright, now let's go ahead and create a path, and this path will be what the path the dominoes take. Alright, come up here to add, curve, and choose path. Now this right here is our path. Let's press tab to go into edit mode, and you can see the direction of the path by these arrows. The path is going to the right. Alright, now let's select this vertex on the end. I'm going to just zoom out and bring this down because I'm going to make the path go up and around, something like that. So with this end vertex selected, press E for extrude, and then left click the mouse to drop E for extrude, left click the mouse to drop E for extrude, left click the mouse to drop E for extrude, left click on the mouse to drop E for extrude, left click on the mouse to drop. And you just do this, make this as long as you want, but that's as long as I'm going to make this. Alright, now I'm going to zoom back into where the domino is. I'm going to select the domino, and I'm going to add a modifier to it. Click on the modifiers panel, add modifier, and then choose array. And you can see that it duplicated the domino, but it's right up against each other. It's literally touching each other. So we want a gap between here, and we want the gap to be twice the thickness of a domino. So click this on 3. So essentially it moved the duplication 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, and 1 space being the thickness of the domino. And then you have one more modifier we need to add to this. Add modifier and choose curve. And we need to, right here, this is the curve modifier. we need to click here and then add the NURBS path. And the NURBS path is the path that we created a few minutes ago. See what I mean? Alright, now let's zoom back in so you can see what's going on. Once we have that added, then come back here to the count on the array. And if we increase the count, then these dominoes are being duplicated along this path. See, now I'm going to zoom out, and then if I raise this count up, you can see the dominoes just duplicating along that path. Now, unfortunately, this whenever you slide it to the left or right, it only goes up to 1,000. But you can actually go higher than that. You just have to type it in, which I don't know why they done it that way. Seems weird. I'm going to put this on 1200. Of course, you adjust yours to however many you need in order to make to fill up your path. That's all you need to do. 1300, maybe that's enough. 1320, 1350. All right, that's good enough. And once that's done, all you need to do is, if that's how you want it, just go ahead and press apply and apply. But let's just suppose you want that longer. You can click on the NURBS path and then click tab to go into edit mode. And then you could actually extrude that again to make it longer or whatever. You could adjust it. Or you could take one of these and readjust the path by pressing G for grabbing, and you can see you can make adjustments to it now if you wanted to. But let's just assume that's the path you want, and it's exactly how you want. Let's just assume you're ready to go. So all you have to do at this point is select the dominoes again and then click apply and apply. Now we have created one long snaky object with a whole bunch of dominoes in the shape of that path, but it's still all one object. So we need to separate those objects, because see, all of these are just one object. So we need to separate them. The easiest way to separate them is just to press tab to go into edit mode, press the letter P as in Paul, and then choose separate by loose parts. Alright, now it's separated all those dominoes and made an individual object out of it. Now press tab to exit edit mode, but we have a problem. The origin of every one of these dominoes is right here, which would be weird physics if we were to try to do a domino simulation at this point. It would be weird. It would not work right. So we need to set the origin of all of those to geometry. That way the origin of this one will be in the middle, the origin of this one will be in the middle. So come up here to object, set origin, and choose origin to geometry. Now you see the dot in the middle of each one of these. Now that's correct. Alright, now let's go ahead and add some physics properties. Now keep in mind, this is the one that's active because it's the lighter amber color. So whenever we apply a physics property, we're actually only applying it to that one right now. So go ahead and click rigid body. Leave everything the same except come down here to dynamics and deactivation. Check deactivation and then check start deactivated, because basically we don't want these dominoes to become active until another domino hits it. The easiest way to explain. Now we need to apply those physics properties to all the dominoes. So come up here to Object, come down here to Rigid Body, and then copy from Active. Now this will take, depending on how many dominoes you have, it will take anywhere between a few seconds to a couple of minutes. I have like 1,200 and something dominoes, so this is going to take my computer maybe 20 seconds, 25 seconds. It might take a little bit longer. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, it will. Come on, computer, hurry up. Da 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 da. I wonder how many people have a clue what tune that is. Oh, come on, computer. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward. Alright, took right about a minute, which sometimes it will take, around a minute. Sometimes it'll be a lot quicker. It's kind of random for some reason. Not for sure why. Alright, now we're pretty much good to go with the dominoes. But let's go ahead and click on the Materials tab. Yeah, see, we have 100 or 1,350 instances of that material. So each one has that material already applied to it, which is one reason why I want to go ahead and apply it to it originally. Alright, now let's go ahead and create a floor for the dominoes to sit on. Add, mesh, and then plane. And as long as we're still in top view, in orthographic view, press G for grab and just stick it about in the middle, and then press S for scale, and then just make it big enough so that all the dominoes are on top of it. Alright, now press 1 for front side view. And well, let's go back to top view. I want to tell you something. We need to go ahead and apply the scale, because see, all these are not 1. This is a physics object. We need the scale to be 1. So press Control A to bring up this menu and then apply the scale. Now it shows 1. We're good to go. Alright, now we need to apply physics to this floor. Click on Rigid Body, change it from active to passive, because we just want it to sit there. We don't want it to fall with gravity. Alright, we want to add a little bit of friction to this floor. Make it a little bit less slippery. And I'm going to put this on 2. And the reason why we want to do that is because whenever one of these dominoes falls over and hits this one, we don't want the bottom of that domino to kick out. We want that domino at the bottom to stay in place. That way the weight can fall and push over the next one. If there's not enough friction on the floor, the bottom will just slip out and it may not knock over the next domino. That's essentially why we're doing that. Alright, now let's go ahead and press 1 to go into front side view and make sure we're still in orthographic view. And then we need to zoom in. We need to lower this floor to just below the dominoes. So press G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and then just bring it down to about here. Just eyeball it at this point. Now let's zoom in. And we're going to zoom in a lot because we want this to be fairly precise. Press G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and bring it to about right there. And then zoom in the rest of the way. I'm literally zoomed in as far as Blender will allow. And then press G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and then just bring it just below. You want just a little bit of a gap. That way you don't have any intersects, but there's not much distance for the dominoes to fall before it hits the floor. And that's such an insignificant, tiny distance because we're zoomed all the way in. So if we zoom out, you can't see the gap. That's exactly what we want. Alright, now let's go ahead and zoom in to this first domino right here. Select this first domino, and the reason why I'm selecting that is because I want to set this as the origin. Press Shift S to bring up this menu and choose cursor to selected. Alright, now put the origin right here. The reason why we're doing that is because I want to be able to create an object and have it be right here. It's just easier. Add, mesh, and then choose sphere. Now that's a huge sphere. We don't need it that big. Press S for scale and then 0.1, enter. I'm going to go a little bit smaller. And press S for scale and then 0.5, enter. And then since this is a physics object and this is not showing 1, press Control A and apply the scale. Now it's showing 1. Alright, now press 1 to go in the front side view. And then we just want to press G for grab and then just move it up to about right here. Doesn't have to be perfect, just around there. And then we want to apply a rigid body, some rigid body properties to this sphere. Click on rigid body and then click on animated, and then right here change it from convex hull to sphere, and that's it. Alright, now we need to keyframe this sphere. You know, we'll put a keyframe right here at frame 1, and we'll just hover over the location and press I. Go to frame 25 and then press G for grab. Move it to about right there and then hover over, press I. And essentially all we did was keyframe the movement of this sphere from here to here. That way it will push over that first domino. And I'm just going to go ahead and press play and make sure that actually works. Sure enough, it works. Now, before we go any further, we do need to make a little bit of an adjustment. And this is just to make sure our physics works better. Come over here to the scene properties, whatever, I think, yeah, scene properties panel. And right here where it's rigid body world, the solver steps per second. Now, in order for it to be as glitch free as possible, we need this number to be a multiple of our frames per second. Now, if we go right here, pardon me, yeah, right here into the printer, frame rate right here, some people will say it doesn't matter, but I can tell you right now, this right here does affect the simulation of this whenever we go to bake it. Now, I generally keep mine on 30 frames per second. Now, you can put yours on 24 or 60 or whatever. I'm just going to have mine on 30. But whether or not you have it on 30, 24, or 60, or whatever, this number right here needs to be a multiple of it. Basically, if that's set to 30 frames per second, you need to have this on 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, you know, a multiple. Now, generally speaking, I set this right here to 240, and there's a reason behind that. If I set this to 240, and then this is set to 24, well, 240 is a multiple of 24. 240 is also a multiple of 30, and 240 is a multiple of 60. So if I set that to 240, it almost doesn't matter what I have this set on, as long as it's 24, 30, or 60, you know, which are the most common ones in my opinion. All right, now this right here, the higher number this is, up to a point, it makes it more stable and makes it react more realistically. 240, in my opinion, seems to be about the sweet spot where it acts mostly realistically, but it doesn't take so long to calculate. All right, now before we click bake, let's go ahead and save this project file. Save, and I'm just going to leave it the untitled because I'm going to get rid of it later anyway. All right, now I'm just going to zoom out, and I can tell you right now 250 frames is nowhere near enough to go this entire route. I'm just going to click play. Don't click play yet, or at least don't do it until you have your file saved. But you can see that it's still right here, and we're just now, and we're getting to 250, and we're only right here. Now, part of the reason behind that is because these dominoes are not small. Even though they're small in terms of Blender, they're still 0.3 meters tall. I mean, we're talking about 1 foot tall dominoes in real world. So they're going to be a little bit slower than real world dominoes. Now we can compensate for that a little bit. Let's turn this up to 3. Now the dominoes are going to fall 3 times quicker, which will sort of compensate for that. And I'm going to guess that it's going to take, for this many dominoes at that setting, it's going to take about 1,000 frames for all the dominoes to fall over. So I'm just going to guess that. Now, make your own determination, your own educated guess based on yours. But I'm going to go ahead and press File, Save, and I'm going to come down here to the cache, change this to 1000, and then I'm going to click Bake. Now, when it comes to rigid body baking, a super fast computer, or at least a moderately fast computer like what I have, it's not going to be drastically quicker than a laptop. It's going to be a little bit quicker, but it's not going to be abundantly quicker. So yours will still go almost this fast, even if you're using a laptop, because this, for the most part, this is single threaded anyway. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through the rest of this. Alright, it looks like it's about finished. Got about 10 more frames to bake, and it'll be done in a second. Alright, now the easiest way to see if we have enough frames is just to click on that, go all the way to the end, and look, we came up about 5 seconds short because 1,000 frames only took it to here. But the great thing about rigid body is we do not need to rebake all of this. We can actually press delete, change this up to, let's say, 1200, click enter, and then press bake, and it will zoom through all of this up to 1,000, and then it will start baking at 1,000. So essentially you don't lose what you already baked. The only time you will actually lose it is if you make this number smaller. If you make it smaller, then it will have to rebake everything. Now, I didn't adjust the number of frames here, but that's fine. It's still putting the bake in there. We can adjust this after it gets done. It's up to almost 1,100, and probably 1,100 is actually enough. So whenever I got to 1,100, I'm pressed escape to stop it, and then I'm going to turn this up to 1,100, zoom out just a little bit, and then go to the end. Sure enough, 11 was enough. how much was it actually? 1020 would have done it. Alright, now go ahead and press save. And let's sort of watch the animation. Of course, it's all kind of small. Realistically, we need to set up a camera and have the camera follow this. But that's more of something along the lines that you need to work out yourself. But basically, yeah, you can see it going around following the dominoes following. And they're following perfect in my opinion. Of course, they're not. They're following almost too perfect. But yeah. And I generally like doing this. I like selecting any one of these dominoes. It doesn't matter which one. Split this window, left click, drag down to split that window. Change this one to the shader editor, and then add a color ramp, add converter, and then choose color ramp. Plug color into color, and then I'm going to add a couple more of these color nodes by pressing the plus, or color tabs, I guess you could call it. I'm going to, let's say, make this one red. I'm not going to make it full bright red. Make it a kind of a darker red. Make this one white, which is all of them all the way up. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of gray to it so it's not so bright. And then make this one blue. Just turn these down and leave it kind of a dark blue. And then I'm going to change this from linear to constant. Alright. And if we want, we can adjust. If we want more of them to be blue, we can have more blue here, and then there will be more blue dominoes. If we want more of them to be red, then we would adjust this so that there's more red here, and then more dominoes would be red. But in this case, I want there to be an even number of each one. So I'm going to set this one to position 0.667, enter, and then this one to 0.333, so it's evenly spaced. Now we need to add one more node. Add input particle info, object info, and then choose random and plug that into the factor. Now, if we done it correctly, which I believe I did, if I zoom in and put this on color, then each domino will have its own random color. See what I mean? And then that's pretty much it. Go ahead and set up your lighting and render it out. Now, how I would set up the lighting for something like this, I would strictly use, well, not strictly, but I would for sure use an HDRI, which I'm going to click on the world properties, add an environment texture, which in my case I'm just going to use an HDRI. Well, that's the wrong one, wrong folder. And I'm just going to use probably an interior scene, fairly bright. This looks like a good one. And leave that set to 1. And a good way to animate the camera for something like this, and it's kind of cumbersome to set up, but this is how I go about it when it comes to dominoes. For the most part, this is how I go about it, because it makes it so much simpler. I'm just going to zoom in to where this first one is at, and I'm going to add an empty, and this empty is going to be right here at this first one. Now I'm going to animate this empty. And the way I'm going to animate it is I'm going to just animate the location. Hover, press I for location. And then I'm going to go ahead about 50 frames. Doesn't have to be precise. And then press G for grab. And then move this to about there. You know, follow the trailing edge of this domino effect. And then hover, press I to add another keyframe. Go to about frame 100 and do the same thing. It's right here, so press G for grab, move it right here, press I. Now, it could take a while to do this, so I'm not going to show you the entire amount. I'm just going to do that much as an example, but you go ahead and do it however you want. Now, with the camera, if I press 0 to go into camera view, come up here, select this camera, go to the camera properties, go to the constraint, add a constraint to the camera, and choose track to, and then choose that empty, choose that empty, and then put this on Y, and then -Z, and now the camera is going to look at wherever this empty is at. So if I go back to the beginning, the camera will automatically follow that empty and essentially follow the trailing edge of that of the dominoes. And also at this point, I could go to the camera properties, click on depth of field, and right here, the focus object, choose that empty. And now, if I set the depth of field to like 0.1 and put this in rendered view, then the camera is actually focused on, let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. Then you can see that the camera is actually focused on that, and then everything else is out of focus. Now 1.1 is a little too narrow. I'd probably actually have this on 0.5, and that's for the most part it. And of course you could, at this point, you could keyframe the location of your camera. Like I could put a keyframe right here and then go right here and then add another keyframe on the location, and see, no matter where I put the camera automatically adjusts its rotation to focus on that empty. So I'm going to go ahead and keyframe that location, and then if I go back to the beginning, I'll go ahead and turn rendered off. If I press play, the camera's moving, but it's still focusing on that trailing edge, or focusing where that empty is. And if I would to have continued keyframing this empty all the way around, it would keep track of it. And then of course you know how to render. But anyway, I think that's it for this long-winded tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know in a comment, and I will do my best to try to answer you. Later, people.